Hello everyone, it's Nina, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing the Get to Know My Reading Taste tag video. I saw that this tag had been co-created by Thoughts on Tomes, who is a channel that I've been really enjoying lately and recently subbed to, who I think has very good takes, and I decided that I would also like to participate. I'll definitely leave the questions as well as a link to the original video in the description if you guys are interested in doing this yourselves. Anyway, let's just get right on into it because there is a lot in this tag and a lot of stuff for me to elaborate on. Starting off, the first question in the tag is how do you rate books? And to give a quick rundown of your star rating system or like any alternative rating system that you use. I'm just going to go ahead and show like a graphic of both my star rating chart as well as my like spice rating charts. I recently updated this like system based on the original one I posted on my Bookstagram, but overall I feel like I used to be very hypercritical with giving out 5 stars, but now I feel like if a book just like makes me want to get more like entrenched in the fandom for it and like really like seek out fan art or like people's analysis and just kind of like engage deeply with the community aspect, that is a sign that it's a 5 star or like a 4.5 star. And I think kind of like my change in how hypercritical I am with rating books leads in well with the next question, which is how do you approach reviewing books? What's your review style? Are you analytical, emotional, casual, or structured? I feel like I have grown to become even more like vibes based in my ratings. I have tried to be like more structured, but really now I just kind of go on how something makes me feel. I have noticed that I will often lash onto elements in books that I like to call my like niche combination of my interests. So either characters who fit a like common archetype that I really love, or an interesting like use of a trope or theme. I do love me a like theme or lesson that is somewhat heavy-handed, but also at the same time like very well articulated throughout a book. In terms of the actual structure of my reviews, I will like write out everything I'm going to say in my like video wrap-ups, but I very rarely will actually post the like written versions of those on my Storygraph, which I definitely need to get better about doing. For most like social media, either like Storygraph or Instagram, I feel like I just usually do star ratings, and all like the written reviews that I write out to serve as the scripts for my reading wrap-up videos, those kind of just get transferred into my reading journal. The next question is, what is a book that made you a reader? I'm gonna go kind of through the entire chronology of my reading journey. Starting off with things in like my youth, it definitely was mostly manga or like books associated with manga or anime series. All of the works from the like manga artist group Clamp, as well as things like Death Note and Bleach. Also, I was thinking about the Instagram trend that was the Where My Lore Started, like collection of images that people will gather of like things they were really into as kids or teens. And I was like, I can't do this because mine is all like extremely problematic yaoi that I read way before I should have in high school. Another like youth obsession I had was in like late middle school or early high school when Twilight got really big. I was in my very much I'm not like other girls phase, and I was reading the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice instead as my like vampire media of choice. In terms of like more recent reading, in 2020 I decided I wanted to get back into reading again because of the trailers for the movie Dune. So I decided I wanted to read the book Dune before I saw the movie. And then during my reading journey, the book that kind of like made me realize that there were stories out there for me was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, which is still one of like my all-time favorite books. Next question is one that I'm so excited to talk about, and that is, do you have a genre niche? If you watch like any videos on my channel, you'll probably see that my favorite subgenre is queer historical fantasy romance, often all together. But I also will kind of like any smaller variation of those, as long as it's queer, or honestly even sometimes if it's not, if it's like just a straight historical fantasy romance, or historical fantasy, or historical romance, those usually are all categories that I will enjoy. I think I also mentioned this in my queer historical romance Rex video, but I really like queer historical romance because I find that in the way we imagine queer people in the past, we then can place ourselves in this like continuous narrative and also imagine that queer people will exist in the future. Because queer people have always existed, but it can be kind of few and far between to find primary sources that show that existence. And also on the more fun side, I love me a good campy bodice ripper, and I don't think just straight people should be able to enjoy that. In terms of overall genre interests, The number one way to get me to read like anything is to say that it's gay. I do think I have grown to be a little bit more discerning because there are some subgenres in queer literature that I'm just not really that interested in. But at the same time, if I was going to read like a sports romance or a cowboy romance or like an unhinged women lit fic type of book, I would want it to be a gay version of that. Just kind of like add that element into any genre and I'll probably consider it. Moving over to like my other main genres, in terms of fantasy, which is definitely a category that I read a lot of, I love me a like magical military or like magical school, anything kind of like a stricter hierarchy and a training section. I've also realized more recently that I do like urban fantasy, and it's honestly a genre I want to get more into overall. And for romances, I pretty much will only read queer romances, but I will read a straight romance if it has something that I know I will like or if it's very unique. Pretty much all contemporary romances I'm pretty bored by, but the one person who I will keep going back to in this genre is Allie Hazelwood. One, because I just like respect the Raylo hustle, and two, because I do really like the love hypothesis, and I find that her writing style in general is something that I really vibe with, so I do want to read more of her work in the future. In terms of genres overall, I do tend to be like, I'll try anything once in terms of genre, because I am a very big mood reader, and sometimes my mood is very much outside what my normal reading tastes align with. The next question is, do you prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? I'm mostly character-driven. I will read a plot-driven book if the plot is really good or really unique, then I can handle a more like underbaked character, but I do find that they very rarely will have a lasting impact on me. Next question is, what is a book that you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? Going back to a book I mentioned before, it is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I have heard critiques, and I do consider a lot of those critiques valid, but I still really like this book. I just kind of know that it's not for everyone. Definitely, again, a very good niche combination of a lot of my interests. Next question is, what is a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know that your reading tastes don't align with them? The book I'm choosing for this is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I legitimately think if you don't at least recognize that this book is well written, I like kind of don't trust your ability to rate books. Because like, honestly, there are some flaws in this book that I think are valid reasons to dislike it. But I do also see that people will often kind of like grasp at straws for reasons why they don't like it, when you at very least have to acknowledge this book is beautifully written, even if there's some like character choices or plot things that you don't like in the book. Okay, next question is a really fun one. And that is, what is in your trash pocket? So these are like books, tropes, or themes that you know are kind of bad, but you still love them anyway. At the end of the year, when I do my tier lists, I usually have a category for this specific type of book that I call my little meow meows, that are books that are kind of trashy or campy, but I still really love them. I guess specifically talking about like more general things besides specific books, I feel like in terms of themes and tropes, I'm gonna say like most very like fanfiction-y tropes in general. Honestly, if someone describes a book as being fanfiction-y, I probably will like it. I don't like all fanfiction tropes, but in general, that is usually a good indicator that I will like it. Also, just in general, if a book is like a serial number filed off fanfiction that's now been converted to a published novel, I usually really like those types of books as well. Just because I can feel like the passion and love for the original characters come through in the novel in a way that I don't necessarily think other published novels necessarily will have, that feel more so like the author's just trying to get a paycheck. I do want to mention one specific trope, just kind of like as a representative of some of the tropes that I like. One trope that I always think of as something that I know a lot of people don't like, but I personally find cute / am like kind of neutral on, and that is size difference. I know a lot of people hate this because of the like stereotype of this like really, really tiny girl with her like tall as a tree boyfriend, but I don't really care. I think it's kind of cute. And maybe because I'm a lesbian and I'll never have a boyfriend of like any height, I kind of like the novelty of imagining what it would be like to have this giant man who will defend my honor. Also, I feel like with this trope, as well as a lot of ones that are similar, I feel like if you go beyond the like heteronormative version, suddenly you are absolutely cooking. Like size difference tropes, but it's with two women. That is so big brain and absolutely perfect. Next question is, do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that, if present, will immediately turn you off from a book. I have quite a few tropes that I don't like, both like more fun ones to talk about and then more serious topics. In terms of more like fun, fluffy tropes I don't really like, I really dislike exes' sibling romances. I also don't really like slow burn because I kind of like want to see them as a couple for the majority of the book. unless the slow burn I feel like is done really well and they actually have chemistry during the slow burn section. And I also don't really care about enemies to lovers. I think it's fine, but I vastly prefer friends to lovers when it comes to choosing between those two tropes. And then in terms of like unfun things that tend to make me dislike a book, I don't really like any book that has what I would consider like a gratuitous assault or harassment or abuse scene. I have found over time that I actually am not super against like assault revenge plot lines. Like I often think about Cersei and the way it's done in that book, but I feel like most forms of sexual violence I just don't like reading about. And then just kind of like general triggers of characters having suicidal idolization, depressive spirals, substance abuse. Like I get why someone would want to write this and how it can also like help and feel therapeutic to the reader. But usually I just don't really find them enjoyable to read and I don't get a lot out of them. But I also feel bad because you can also kind of tell that these books mean a lot to the author, and usually we'll have author's notes that say something like, I wrote this book in like the darkest time of my life. But it just makes me feel kind of bad, and usually these end up going in a tier in my end of the year tier list called Oh No. Although I think at this point now, I've kind of learned to be able to avoid these books, so they are more few and far between in terms of ones I actually end up picking up. Next question is, what is a strong opinion about a book you have read that was released in the last year? I actually don't have a specific book to talk about, but I do want to talk about a overall like book talk, booktube trend. And that is the fact that I think that the reactions that people have had around smut in books has gotten like so blown out of proportion. A lot of people critiquing this, whether it be people in the book community or just like random commentary YouTubers, it's usually either clickbait or ragebait content that is very low-hanging fruit and doesn't say anything very insightful. And I also feel like people just like do not realize how quickly it can go to become a slippery slope into conservative puritanical values around sex, and how quickly that can eventually turn into book banning. And honestly, do I like even half these books that are getting slandered? No, but I will like defend people's rights to read whatever they want till the end of time. Next question is, what do I look for in writing? I do tend to like a like really unique metaphor. I also really like the blending of humor and intensity, which I feel like is why I really like Tamsin Muir's writing style. I also really like really quick, funny banter, and where a main character actually like has some personality over being just an audience stand-in. Next question is, how do you decide what to read next? For me, it's a combination of like mood reading and also what books do I have desire to do like full reading vlogs or videos for? Which leads me into the next question, which is, where do I get inspiration for booktube content? I feel like this is such a good question, and honestly really made me think about what drives my own creativity in creating videos. I think it definitely is a combination of content that I organically come up with, as well as then stuff that I watch, and also stuff that I see do well on other channels. Because as much as I'm not really trying to like go viral, I know that phrase like has no meaning now, I do like obviously want people to watch my videos. I do feel like I try to create videos that I would also want to watch, which I feel like I've heard is actually not a very good content strategy, but like I said, this isn't my job, so I don't really care. I also will try to incorporate more like kind of like lifestyle adjacent content into my videos. Next question is, if you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? What is the book that you think deserves more attention and why? It's been a little while since I've talked about this on my channel, but have I spoken to you about Our Lord and Savior, Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chapeko? This book is so good. I feel like it did have a moment where some booktubers read it and loved it, but it definitely did not get widespread appreciation that I think it deserves. This is an adult fantasy romance with a queer polyamorous throuple that includes a vampire hunter and 2 vampires. If you like either the Castlevania video games or the Castlevania Netflix anime, you need to read this book. It is overall just so amazing. Definitely another one of my favorite books of all time, if not my favorite book of all time. Okay, and the last question for this tag is, who are some booktubers who have similar reading taste to yours? And my answer to this question is, I actually have no idea. I feel like there is a very big disconnect between those who have videos that have an editing style that I really like watching and those who have a reading taste that's very similar to me. I also, maybe kind of controversial, but I don't really watch a lot of booktube to get book recommendations anymore because my TBR is already so long and I have so many books already that I want to read. I honestly do need to find, though, more people that do vlogs on book series that I really love so I can, like, get into the discussion with them in the comments. And that's honestly kind of what I've tried to do with my, like, single book or single series reading vlogs lately. So if a person that really, really liked those books sees my video, there can be, like, more conversation in the comment section about it. So those are all the questions for the tag, and that's going to be it for this video. Through this video, I'd love to find more people that have a similar reading taste to mine so that I can find more channels to check out and watch in the future. Also, if you feel like our reading tastes align, I would love to talk to you guys in the comments, and it would be really great if you guys are able to subscribe to my channel. I am a pretty small booktube channel, but it's definitely a goal of mine in 2025 to try and hit 1,000 subscribers. So it'd be really great if any of you want to contribute to me reaching that goal by subscribing. Anyway, with that all said and done, we are now at the end of this video. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!